nook and cranny in the country to convince you and I to give them their vote. But in canvassing their positions, they have met a constituency on its own, which is barred from making open statements about politics or partisan politics. Some say that law is archaic. I'm speaking of Article 276 of our Constitution, which bars chiefs from being engaged in active partisan politics. Some say it is an archaic law that should be changed. Others say it protects a hallowed institution. Tonight, I want to know what your opinion is. So connect with us via WhatsApp 055 11 11 997 or go on our Facebook page Joy 99.7 FM or connect with us on Twitter via the hashtag Ghana Connect. This is Ghana Connect. My name is Daniel Dadzie. Welcome to the show.
I'm Ghana and she no crime me kwanza. Eza se ukrom ho ubenya ma yokro we ubenya ma yokro we so mu nyina wo ho. So ukrom ho na no obia o bia o se ko ba se kuyu mo ni buta a bia embo o mu nyina so na nane o mu nyina so na nane o nti ozo jina pinfin na de okose dem ho ne yese pa ba no kotuma a what you be azu kwa ndi obebi a utimi yo ho so sa de no ne
tatu kwane pa especially China Jacob wanjua there's no further no so it's not Brazil Jacob osaya e wa China many ma etinam ba bi atade ni ho na juma no bi ne ya menkoa de yewura Ghana fo akontoa na sabatoma wa sa de no Yoho na ye e beta wachi afese ebedimu na sante ka na no o tu o tu ti sante ba kai yesu o we bia ke
The Asantehene said Asanteman will remember your good works. We are also saying that, just like the song goes, you have performed exceedingly abundantly. Nana, continue.
So, yes, you are the for there, never asem naba. So, Yenina will be a Amayoquim in Sofia, what you are, and as you will make you any more for Yippie. No, Yamia Quasi and Cotuaba. And they are who to me. Name of CSA Yama, you could know you and Makujina, we yet here now, we yet there. I'm Ghana, she said, no crime, may
there is no doubt in my mind at all that where a chief indicates in very clear terms that he prefers one candidate, that one presidential candidate or parliamentary candidate to another candidate, then that should form part of participating in active partisan politics.
In the case of the Domahine, for example, we don't hear him endorsing the candidate, but he is approving of his promises.
That's one, that's very slippery ground. That one, definitely, lawyers will not agree. Okay, some will say yes, others will say no.
And connecting with us currently is Ira Kareem Adams. He is a social entrepreneur, and Dr. Ebenezer Ayesu. He's an adjunct lecturer, Institute of African Studies, and of course we'll also be joined by Dr. Nwajima. He is a political science lecturer in the University of Ghana, and Professor Albert Puni, who is a governance expert. Once again, my name is Daniel Dadzie. You can connect with us on Twitter with the hashtag Ghana Connect. You can look for me at I am Daniel Dadzie, or go to at Joy997FM, or you can go on our Facebook page, Joy 99.7 FM, where we are streaming live. And of course, leave us a comment there. The big question is it a time to change the law, or we should rather crack the whip? Let me begin with Dr. Ebenezer Ayesu, who is joining us via Zoom. Dr. Ayesu, you are a lecturer at the Institute of African Studies. I'll crave your indulgence that you would allow me to read the Article 277 of the Constitution, which defines who a chief is. It says, in this chapter, unless the context otherwise requires, chief means a person who, hailing from the appropriate family and lineage, has been validly nominated, elected, or selected, and enstooled, enskinned, or installed as a chief or queen mother in accordance with the relevant customary law and usage. This defines who a chief is on paper, but how important is a chief, and how does that relate to our decision that they should not involve themselves in partisan politics? Dr. Eben.
Thank you and good evening. A short correction. I was once the Institute of African Studies. I'm not there, though currently I'm there. I'm an adjunct. Currently, I'm at Heritage Christian College. So that's it. But to your question, the definition, as stated in the Constitution which you read, is a true reflection of the reality. Who a chief is someone who comes from the royal family, having passed through the processes of nomination, election, and installation, and then becomes the occupant of the blackened stool, which is, and therefore becomes a representative of the ancestors. So he's the link between the living and the ancestors. And by definition and by their rule, they are expected to be the father, the mother of all the members of the community, the ethnic, the family, outsiders, and whatever who form constitute membership of the community. He is or she is a father, mother to these people. And in that regard, I think the framers of our Constitution are taking lessons from our history. In the 1992 Constitution decided to bar chiefs from partisan politics. And that is not the only situation where chiefs are set aside in the day-to-day affairs of the community. Their position as chiefs set them aside from so many engagements, which I think time will not allow us to talk about.
Dr. Eben, I would ask that when I come back to you, I want us to frankly engage the question of power. The roles that chiefs have been left with, have they been left with any power?
There are still some people that do not agree, that such a person should be unskinned or installed because of whatever politics that happens at that level. And so it makes it extremely difficult for, such chiefs to be able to fully do what is expected of them as chiefs, because they are going to be faced with a lot of opposition. And that is what we currently see happening in most parts of the country. I mean, unlike in certain places where it is very obvious that no one can disrespect. I mean, when we look at a place like the Ashanti region, for instance, there's no doubt that the role of the Otumfuo is very, very much, respected. We still get him playing his full duty as a king, remaining very neutral, as a king of the Ashanti kingdom and all of that. But we can't say same for other places, in our country. So we still have some chiefs that still exude that level of influence and are able to perform their role as expected of them. But in certain places, we do not get that happening as well. And that's also as a result of some of the things I mentioned. The fact that some of them have openly, joined the bandwagon for partisan politics. And so you get them, openly declaring their stance and where they belong and all of that, knowing very well that you're supposed to be, neutral in such an instance, just so you'd be able to command respect from, both divides. And also the traditional politics that happens as well, where sometimes certain people that are tend to be illegitimate, are given chieftaincy titles. And so these are some of the things that happen. But it still does not take away the fact that we still have some, traditional rulers or some chiefs who still have, that level of power and that level of influence and are still able to govern as expected of them, amidst the fact that we have, political leadership in the country that is largely responsible for running the affairs of the country.
It's interesting, Ira. I just want to understand, are you saying that you feel a chief is weakened, his position is weakened when he decides to declare support for a certain political party?
What I'm saying is that, you see, when you're a chief or you're a man of God, or or a statesman, let me put it that way, you are expected to be, neutral in your public utterances and and how you deal with a lot of things, especially when it has to do with the fact that you are not dealing with just yourself alone or just one section of people. You are a leader over a group of people with different ideologies and different biases, right? So if you choose to pick one side, obviously, then you're going to have challenges with another side. And, some of these things may lead up to you not getting, that kind of respect that is expected of you as a chief. And that's why, to some extent, you may even call on someone and the person wouldn't, heed to whatever it is that you ask them to do. Because you have, brought yourself down to a particular level where ordinarily you shouldn't have. And so that is what I was saying.
Yeah. So, Dr. Eben, what Ira is really telling us is that the source of a chief's power is the devotion of his people. And so if a chief would in any way do something that would alienate himself from even a section of the people he leads or he governs, his position is sort of weakened. Do you agree with this line of thought that this is the true source of a chief's power? Because I've read a bit about monarchies elsewhere, and they believe that they are appointed by God. The source of their power is God above, and so whatever the people think about them, they are still vested with this power.
To some extent, what he said, to some extent, here in our context and in our culture, we don't have absolute power of the chief or the Queen Mother. The power is vested in the people, and he is to hold on to that power, basically respecting the norms, practices, including the views of his or her people. So yes, to that extent, if you don't go left, and this afternoon or yesterday there was an incident whereby a chief of one of the areas, I don't remember, but the Akan areas, having made some pronouncement, and some members, section of the society, organizing a press conference and asking him to apologize because, to quote them, he had lied. And that is the problem. When he made that statement, which the people perceive to be lies, and they will stand up to you. And they were even pointing to the fact that they are all in the town with him. They are witnesses to everything in the town. And what he said was full of lies. So you should apologize. In that context, if they are to press on and to demand for an apology or to call for his bestowment, then the respect that you have for your people will not hold. But going back, the governance aspect made a very important point regarding the role of the chief, whereby Yes, there's politicking around the process to become a chief. Something they have it, but for them, they have perfected their system in such a way that when one, you can't disclose any interest of becoming a king until the king is dead and is buried. And when that happens, the floodgate is open for people to contest. Finally, when they settle on a candidate, all those who contested with him are made to swear an oath to the king that they are going to recognize and support him as a king. As to whether they will do it wholeheartedly, no one cares. But once they do that, you don't go out to contest. So that's one issue. But the issue of development, the role of the chiefs, and this ties into the question you reserved for me after the break, that as a chief, your role is to see to the development of your people. So in the quest to pursue development, two options are open, or three. One, if your area has the resources on which you are going to develop, fair enough. Two, you, the person, the chief or the queen mother as a person and as the custodian of the traditions and everything, if you have the resources to bring about the development, fine. If these two are lacking, then obviously, because of the post-colonial establishment, which is the nation state, you have to tap into the national resources for the development of your people. And how do you go about it? This issue has led to a situation where people clamor for educated chiefs because we have reached a situation whereby you should be able to write, you should be able to go to officials to lobby for projects. So it is this development aspect which is opening them up to whatever is on the ground. If it's political party activity or politicking comes in. The other issue too has to do with as the custodian of the society and everything, no politician goes to an area without going to see the chief. And they have couched their language, the politicians have couched their language, they're saying that we have come to you for blessings. And if you go to a person for a blessing, the person by the narrative that comes out should reflect the blessings that you were asking for. So this is the picture that we are seeing all through.
Okay.
On the other hand, the chiefs have counselors, they have elders and others who should be able to counsel them on even the language to use. Your language, let me use, excuse me for my word, the level playing chiefs who can receive all contestants and give out their blessings, whereby no one will take them or tag them as supporting A or B. The others, based on their experience with a particular party or a politician, might doctor or might put more ink into the blessing or might bring in curses involved when they encounter them. So this, for me, this is what we are seeing today in Ghana. And if we have to go to the law, it means whatever we do, the Constitution, whatever we do to the Constitution about chiefs, first and foremost, the institution is relevant. Right now, there are so many villages and communities where we don't have police stations. When there is a fire outbreak, it is the chief's palace that will beat the drum to summon volunteers to come. When someone goes to the farm and he does not come, return, it is the chief who is to mobilize people to go and look out for.
Okay.
Yes, we've not reached a stage where the resources of the nation could evenly be spread to all corners. So in the absence of the state in those corners, the chiefs are there.
So does that mean, Dr. Eben, yes, that with the presence of these services, as we see in most urban centers in the country, the chiefs may be irrelevant?
In the urban centers, to some extent, some areas, because of the weak nature of their chieftaincy institution, and the weakness comes from so many factors, they are not able to play their traditional role as the custodian and then the protectors, the initiators of everything for the community.
Okay.
But if you go to the rural communities, it is there that because first and foremost, the central government is its presence is not strongly felt. You see the authority, the power and authority of the chief at play.
Okay. If you just tune in, it's 20.
On how the person, yes, go on.
Right. Dr. Ben, thank you so much. Dr. Ben Ayesu was with the Institute of African Studies. He's now an adjunct lecturer there. Very knowledgeable about the subject of chieftaincy. It's 28 minutes to the top of the hour, 7 p.m. I want to quickly switch gears into the main meat of the conversation, which is whether or not chiefs should declare support. I, however, wanted Professor Puni to quickly comment on how chiefs are resourced. And I'll tell you why I think it's important we go about this conversation this way. We now understand who a chief is and what role they play. Dr. Ayesu is of the opinion that it is when chiefs are looking to develop their communities that they sometimes feel compelled to align themselves with one political party or the other so that they can attract development to the communities they lead. However, I want to find out from Prof. Puni, is there a way that a chief can raise resources outside of lobbying a political officer so that he can lead the development drive of the people he leads?
Okay, I think the chief can do that, and some chiefs are able to tap into their communities, the membership of their communities who are well endowed, and then they can pull some resources together to develop the community. There are several examples around that. Chiefs have been able to develop their community through their indigenes who are much more resourced, and then they are able to lobby them to bring development to their area. So apart from, let's say, the government or the political power, the chief also, some of them are able to do that. And, you know, the chieftaincy institution itself, if you critically look at it, some of the chiefs are sitting on their area happen to be very well endowed. And then for that matter, any political party or whatever who come would like to exploit some of those resources. And like Dr. Eben said, you can't go and then exploit the nation's resources. Let's say gold is found in the community without involving the chiefs. They are the local stakeholders, and then you can't do that. So apart from, let's say, the chief who has a resource in his community and is going to help the whole nation, at least when the political party come out with any developmental project in his place, you can see that that chief himself or herself is able to get some kind of development associated with the kind of resources that happen to be in his area. But all said and done, I think chiefs are able to tap through various other developmental areas to bring development to their area. And then Doc actually said right. Now people are clamoring for chiefs that are well educated so that they can know where to get these developmental initiatives aside of the government. So chiefs are doing some are doing very good, some are not doing too good.
But Prof, I just want to quickly get a quick yes or no, if possible, on the point Iram raised earlier that a chief is weakened when he declares support for a certain political party. You seem to agree with Dr. Eben that chiefs are sometimes compelled to approach political officials or the political elite for development. But does that weaken their position?
I don't see a chief. If the chief is involved in partisan politics underline, let's say the chief is a card-bearing member of a political party. He is seen with the political party campaigning. Then that chief's position actually will be weakened. But if a chief is lobbying a political candidate who comes to his area, that because of one or two developmental projects that we have seen in our area, or some initiative that you have brought in there, I think that if you come next time, we will support you so that you bring more development to our area. And the people know that these development projects are very good to the community. I don't think that the chief position will be. But if the chief is actually involved in active partisan politics, okay, that chief position will be compromised.
All right. Professor Obespuni, thank you very much for that answer to the question. I love how you actually broke it down to various levels of involvement with active partisan politics and the effects that it has. I know a lot of you want to connect with us. I see a number of your messages. 055 11 11 997. Manuel Kranting is here to read them for us. But before that, here's how you can connect with us.
Join us now on Twitter, #Ghana Connect Live, Facebook, Joy 99.7 FM, or send us a WhatsApp on 0244 340 437, and we will call you back. Join the nation's biggest conversation now and connect to authority.
Joy 99.7 FM.
And Manuel is here to read some of your messages.
So, Daniel, a few of the messages that are coming through this evening on our WhatsApp platform. The chiefs and politicians already know the political party they are affiliated to. Kwame Bantama sends that one. If Ochinyene gets involved in active politics and that particular party is tagged, well, this one says that, good evening, Didi. It's a capital no. Our chiefs should rather serve as a bridge between political opponents, since they are revered across the political divide. Should they also become political, it is dangerous to our country. Isaac James from Abokobi sent that one in. So it says chiefs should be involved in politics.
These people are aware that, you know what, so and so came, they did this, did that, and it has been beneficial to our society. And so if you highlight those things, yeah, that's fine, because every chief wants his people to succeed. Every chief wants to see that at the end of the day, there's some sort of development happen within their communities or within their catchment areas. But that should not mean that the chief should openly declare a political party and then tell all his people to rally behind such a political party, as well as openly engage in partisan politics. I think for that is a no. And any chief that finds himself doing anything like that, I would really have I have second thoughts about such a person. Because imagine that there is an issue. He is the chief, is supposed to solve the issue. How then does he solve it if he already has a buyer?
Right.
Because there are certain chiefs we know that have been, very active in partisan politics even before becoming chiefs. But after they were skinned or installed, they took, a step back, laid back, and just allowed, the processes to work. One of such chiefs I can mention is the chief from my hometown. The Pembura, for instance, was a DC under the MPP, but now he's a chief. And you would hardly, get him making open statements, open endorsements, for the MPP. So those are some of the things that we need to look at.
That's very interesting. And actually, Prof. Funi, this is exactly what I was going to ask, because I was going to refer to Tongo Rana who is a former member of parliament on the ticket of the NPP for the Talensi constituency. He stepped away from his seat in parliament to become a chief in 2015. However, if you are familiar with his story, you know he's a bit unique because he was a member of the NDC, then he left the NDC, joined the NPP, entered parliament, then left parliament for BT Baba to take over from him in Talensi, that Talensi by-election, which turned a bit violent. In a position that someone like Tongo Rana or someone like Pengbira Eres chief holds, do they not have the same conflict where people have openly associated them with a certain political party for a long time, so they may have trust issues with them?
Oh, that is very possible. And I think that, for the developmental aspect of a chief championing developmental aspect, there is no question about that. The way and manner you go about lobbying the political authority that come to your community is also very important. You can tell a political party that they should bring developmental projects into your community without offending or seeming to support or canvass for votes for that political party. So I agree that tag is there, but I think that Adams actually rightly said that the chief has comported himself very well, meaning that anytime any authority should come there, whether MPP or NDC, he is guided with his utterances. I think that the problem we are having now is that in the quest of chiefs championing developmental initiative of a particular government, they are now going into areas of canvassing for support, for votes for them. And then that is the conversation we should be having. How should chief present their idea or their support or the way they want to canvass for development into their area? That should be the discussion. The chief itself, I think, is a good developmental agent in his community. The way and manner you go about it, it's very, very important. If you don't go about it very well, everybody will tag you that you are actually supporting or engaging in active partisan politics. Okay.
So do you think that a chief can properly canvass for this development without openly declaring support? Because I know a number of chiefs in the Western region who have done this in the past, and their constituents or their subjects have been better off.
A chief is a diplomat. Okay, and the way and manner he couch his words wouldn't be offensive. Okay, so I think that it is also part of the way our chiefs sometimes go about canvassing for development for their areas. That is what is causing the whole debate. Okay, because I know some other chiefs who also said that because party government didn't bring any initiative to their communities, they don't think that they will support the chief or the political party. There is another side of the whole argument. So it's not like just supporting. Some too say, we are not going to support you. Okay? Meaning that the chief is actually looking for development in his area. So how can the chief actually present that developmental agenda without being offensive or seen to support a particular party or engaging in active politics?
Prof, thanks. Let me quickly go on the phone lines and connect with Eddie, who sent us a message earlier from Takrady. Eddie, good evening. You sent us this message. You said we've confused sets of legislation which does not give an answer when you sum up the total logic thereof. Whether chiefs can participate in politics, we have destroyed all our salient, objective institutions who can act as a counterbalance and counter-check to governance. Now we are left with chieftaincy institutions that adulterate.
That are paneled. So we play ostrich when the bat. I mean, it shouldn't come out. We should see some semblance and never. I don't even want to talk about the Peace Council. The least said about them, the better. We put it too hard to every level.
Okay. Eddie,
also there.
Eddie, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really enjoyed speaking to you. And it's important that we discussed his text in detail because, first of all, the role that a chief plays in the traditional community, and I'm sure Dr. Eben will back me up on this, is very similar to what the judiciary plays in urban settings. And so when a politician should approach and try and induce a chief, then you're sort of inducing a DCE, a leader, and also a judge as well, which is where the allure is. The allure for someone who mobilizes people like a politician. Dr. Eben, so would it be your view that the chiefs can find a way to involve themselves in politics without openly endorsing politicians, and how can they do that?
Thank you. Sorry for. Yes, they can, and it's all borders on one, the culture of presentation, the language that they because before the enactment of the native customary ordinance, which the British brought in, banning a number of inhuman practices, including human sacrifice and others. There was a particular practice where they call it Ohini Inshira, blessing the chief. But technically it was not. It was a curse. And it generated a lot of tension in communities. And therefore, the British was similarly, if the chief balances his language, he could address whichever political figure that comes his way without people thinking deeply that, oh, he's on A or on B. But we should, there's one element that we are leaving out in those conversations. It's all being the chief. But we should also look at the positions. If there have been situations where a whole traditional area, I remember back on his knees, for someone, he himself and his party trusted that he could do the job for them. And then the community said, no, we are not going to accept this. So his conduct had produced.
Unfortunately, the internet connection as Dr. Eben's end seems to be failing us. What we will do at this point is that before I take final comments from Ira and Professor Puni, because it's 3 minutes to the locker room with Georgia the Jr., proud or Dadzie, I must say, Manuel Cranting has the results of the poll. Manuel, what did we ask and what did the public say?
So what's the question? One-line question. Chiefs endorsing politicians. Time to change the law or crack the whip. On Twitter, 56% of people who have voted say crack the whip and 44% say change the law. So it's a bit of mixed reactions, not so much of a definitive result that will say clearly people are thinking in a certain direction. But you generally have more of the people saying crack the whip on the chiefs who engage in active politics. I just want to run you through a few of the messages that have come under the poll. This is from at I am Victor 1414 on Twitter. Says, indeed, it's an archaic law We've advanced in our liberal democracy, and that law must be repealed. In a liberal democracy, no one should be barred from engaging in partisan politics. However, it's required that for a level-headed human being and citizen, for that matter, who is a leader of a body that is not an inherent political establishment like the office of a chief, reverend minister, etc., one must exercise some level of tact or good judgment in order to not jeopardize their position. This says, okay.
Right. Thank you so much, Manuel. I have a question here from a listener, and I want to quickly run that by Professor Puni. Professor Puni, we've been talking about cracking the whip or changing the law, but if we were to crack the whip, what could be done to them? We claim that their power is derived from the people, but that is only if the people can hold them accountable. How do we hold chiefs accountable? And if they really do partake in politics, what can be done to them, Professor Puni?
Okay, I think that the traditional processes are there. If a chief should, let's say, Dr. Eben was saying that press conferences don't work, but the traditional processes are there. The chief has elders there who, when